All right, everybody, welcome back. On today's podcast, we talk about AI, and I mean AI. My buddy Josh Jurkovich, who's been on the show before, we talk about the problems that he's seeing with people using AI, and then we spent the rest of the podcast in creative ideas of how to use it, how to benefit from it, how to generate ideas, how to use it as a coach, how to use it to create processes and implementation if you're a visionary, or if you're an implementer, how to use it to create vision, our little hacks, the questions to ask it. And today's podcast is almost an invitation to being creative thinking, to leverage an incredible tool that's not going anywhere, but how to use it in the lens of protecting the most important parts of your business and your identity, but leveraging it to buy back your time and to help you be better at what you do. And there were tons of ideas, tons of things shared. And even at the end of the show, I ask you to send each of us a DM with your most creative ways or the ways that you found using AI and any of the tools that you use that has helped you buy back time or be creative, because I want to crowdsource them. Number one, for me to play with, but number two, for us to potentially share in an episode in the future to help all of us benefit and win. And so it was a fun episode. Josh is one of my brothers, somebody I love to pieces. And so I'm excited for you to listen to this one. So without further ado, let's get into the show. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mind of George show. One of the classics where if I just hit record 30 minutes ago and my homeboy and I started talking, there'd be drastically powerful nuggets, but we decided to hit record to bring them in now. So if you've listened to the show, I don't know, for more than a couple of months, you've already heard this incredible guest. His name is Josh Jurkovich. He's a dear friend of mine. He's a brother of mine. And we're back for round two because we opened a couple of loops on the previous podcast. And the only thing that I can promise is that we have the intention of talking about AI and how to use AI, but what comes after that, that's a complete liability at this point. And so the best conversations that we have are conversations from the heart. And, you know, this show, and I don't even know why I feel called to say this, but this is coming through my heart right now. This show is about helping entrepreneurs at the deepest level be in alignment and operate to their superpower and have the biggest impact that they want to have. And we label it customer journey. We label it mindset, we label it relationships, but really it's number one, recognizing that none of us are alone in this journey. And the power of our success comes down to the power of our community. And every one of us has a seat at the table. And the reason I say this is this incredible gentleman has been in my life for a long time now. We're getting close to a decade. And if I could have written down on a piece of paper how it would happen, I could not have predicted it in any way, shape, or form. But he's back now. And now he's my brother in faith, my brother in life and in business and support, and is even the king of reminding me things I taught him years ago to take my own medicine and bring in. And he's somebody I love and respect, and we laugh and we cry. And it also just reminds me so often of the power of relationships and focusing on them for the right reasons, but removing the attachment and the outcomes that we think might happen and allowing things of even greater depth to come to fruition. And that's how I feel like I have this incredible man in my life. So Josh, welcome back to the show.
Oh my God, thank you so much for having me. Like you said, we had a pretty deep conversation even leading into this for the last 30 minutes. So hopefully we'll get to wrap on a couple of those things. We left an open loop on the last episode that we did together where I was like, should we talk about AI? Like, should we talk about how, like, you know, the customer journey and AI and how this fits into marketing and all of that? And you're like, we'll save that for another episode. So that's why we're here today, outside of the wherever the Holy Spirit decides to guide this conversation outside of that, because it could go any number of a million directions. But a lot of it's about just showing up in your authenticity and allowing the words to flow. And, you know, the beauty of it is, yeah, we've known each other for about 9 years, since 2016, around then. And it was almost like immediate that we got along and we spoke a lot of the same languages, and you believed a lot of what I believed, except for the universe and different things like that. But maybe we can go on the vein of AI and closing that loop a little bit, but I'll let you lead the show. But thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. I actually think it's a good kickoff for the conversation, right? Because I have my beliefs around AI, and they've shifted drastically. And you have always been, since I've known you, way better at learning things, integrating things, testing things, and playing with things. So like, I feel like in the lens of AI, I'm like a preschooler and you're probably, getting your bachelor's or your master's at this point because that's how you operate with that stuff. And I'm like, can we just talk about it? Like, can we just like be in a room and teach it, not like play with it? But you brought up a couple really, really valid points of like even opening that loop and authenticity. But like, I'd love to start with, you're in marketing, you're in business, right? You coach people in business. You have been the systems, processes, integration guy kind of forever, and also dual hatted in marketing and messaging. And we've existed in the same world and had, similar amounts of success. So like, I'm going to kind of leave this one open, but like, what are your, at a very high level, thoughts of AI and its use in the lens of like business, entrepreneurship, and life? And then we'll kind of tee up from there.
Well, first and foremost, I think, you have to understand and respect AI is an incredible tool. And if you're not using it, you will be left behind in some ways just for efficiency and operation standpoint. But the other side of that is the problems that arise. And I think that would be a good place for me to start, is the problems that I see when I'm coaching, training, consulting, and working with companies. And you trying to utilize AI as a replacement to thinking. And this is one of the biggest problems that I have, because one of the things, when you're consulting with a company and maybe you're walking in and you're getting the entry point when it has to do with marketing, but you know as well as I do that 9 times out of 10, when you're working with a company, it's actually you're writing permission slips. You are working with the CEO, you're working with the CFO, you're working with different leaders. And a lot of times it's their ability to think that you're really transforming. And when you transform their ability to think, you're going to transform their company and their marketing and all of those pieces, because it has a trickle down effect. Now, maybe I'll start out by telling a story. So a couple of months ago, I brought on a client, right? And we have a few different frameworks we go in during onboarding. And a couple of them are really diving into customer avatar, like who you're dealing with and how to communicate to your customer, right? So with this client, I assigned him a task to, hey man, like I want you to list out from your perspective the top 20 to 30 problems that your customers experience, but I want you to go really deep. I don't want you to just list the surface level problems that they're going to say they have. I want you to cascade it. And that's one of the frameworks that I use, is cascade the pain through your wealth, your relationships, your relationship with God, your mindset, all of those different categories, because each problem that you have actually affects every other area. And so I asked somebody to go through this exercise, and it's really a thinking exercise. The point of the exercise is to get somebody to think, or at least train them to think how to talk to their customers, right? And 3 or 4 days go by, we have our next weekly call, and I receive an email, and I look at the email, and it is obvious that it was not his idea or his brain or the things that he thought about that were the customer problems, but he decided to take a shortcut and punch it all into ChatGPT rather than taking the time to meditate and think on what the actual problems are in the words that the customer would use. And I basically didn't read it. I wouldn't read it because it negated the purpose of the exercise, which was to get the person to think. A lot of times people wonder, like, how are you so natural on video? How are you so natural or able to, as a copy wrap so easily about what your customer experience is, so you can write ads really quickly, or so you can do a live video and understand how to speak to your customers? Well, the reason that you're able to do that is because you've done so much thinking exercise and thinking work through what the problems are and what the possibilities could be if they had your product or service, or if they had your thing, that it's just second nature to you, because you've gotten so many reps in thinking through what these problems are, and you become obsessed with it. But if you use AI and you use that shortcut, you're actually, the person that you're robbing is yourself, because you're robbing yourself of getting the reps of being able to understand how to think. One of my favorite movies on this topic that I think is really relevant to AI is a movie called Idiocracy, if you've ever seen it. If you haven't, to give you the overarching story, it's a futuristic movie where everybody are complete morons because technology took over and they didn't have to learn anymore. So I guess the moral of what I'm saying is AI is a wonderful and incredible tool, but it can also take a lot from us in our ability and our thinking power and our thinking time. And so you have to be really careful to not allow it to replace your ability to think, write, communicate, and all of those things, because it's the reps on the other side after 10 years of getting to know you that I can speak with clarity about these subjects because I've spoken about them and thought about them so many times. But if I let AI do it for me,
Mhm.
I'm not going to have that ability in 10 years. And ultimately, 100% of entrepreneurship and all of this, it's not necessarily about money. It's about growth, right? We want to become the next version of
Mhm.
ourselves that can accomplish that thing. And if we use AI too much, we are going to inhibit our ability to grow. And so that's kind of my opening statement, if you will, on my thoughts on AI.
Yeah. Well, well, thank you for your TED Talk. I love it, actually. A couple of things that you said in there that I think are worth highlighting. Number one being that communication is really probably the number one superpower of entrepreneurs. Like I had Jesse Elder on the show, and he said the value that you derive from the world is your ability to communicate, not also what you do, but how you do it from like a human to human, right? And then it reminds me of like, and this is where I'm gonna bring myself down a level, but like, do you remember before we had iPhones when you needed to get somewhere that you would have to like print out MapQuest instructions and then like follow them and like you would learn routes? But now everybody is so literally defaulted to, oh, I'll just put it in Google Maps or I'll put it in Apple Maps. And I had a conversation with Jim Quick about this, and everybody knows Jim in the brain. We've basically atrophied that same muscle to where we don't take things in our surroundings into account. We don't remember where we're going. We don't remember where we parked our car. But when you don't use it, you lose it. And I actually love that point. I have a, I'm going to lead this question a bit too, but you're somebody who dances like in the lens of entrepreneurship in most of the primary buckets, from marketing, sales, paid media, delivery, and those pieces. And so you have your hands in a lot of the pots. And like one of the big complaints I see people have, like, I can tell AI wrote that ad, or I can tell GPT wrote that ad, but I don't think a lot of people think of the associated costs with trying to take that shortcut. Because like I know for me personally, right, I'm not a big expert when it comes to ChatGPT, but I've had to change my processes as well, because we know as in marketing, right, the way to win the game is by copying and pasting what your customers say or communicating it in their language, right? And so I even have a process now. After I get off a client call, after I get off with a connection call, I send an audio to myself or Ashley, and I'm like, hey, here's what they said their challenge is. Here's how they're describing it. Here's the texture of that. And I've yet to find a way for AI to, potentially it could, but like, what do you see as the downstream consequences of trying to quote unquote take that shortcut? And like, what implications does it have in somebody's business when it comes to their time or even the money or the results that are created?
Yeah. So, I think first and foremost, and this goes into another topic that I believe about AI, is I see all of these software programs popping up. And it's like this AI chatbot that can book appointments for you, or this AI chatbot that can do this, or this AI chatbot that can do that. Right. And there's so many different apps. And one of the things in that is like, you have to be really careful to do that too early on, because I see smaller companies trying to get AI to take over something that could be done at scale and can be done wonderfully at scale. But when you're first learning about your customers, like I have a belief that I use that in the very beginning, or, in the beginning stages, when you're less than $1 million company, you're most likely going to be learning from your customers for a really long time. And your customers are going to teach you what to create. They're going to teach you what to build. They're going to teach you how to communicate with them. And if you don't have a human being on the other side listening to them and understanding how they speak, there are ideas that you won't have. Now, I can't quantify the value of an idea that you didn't have, but I can tell you that the most successful people that I've seen built businesses on the back of great ideas that they had in the shower, or that they had when they were in some sort of trance state. I've been studying a lot of NLP and hypnotism and things like that to be able to modify my language to be in a hypnotic state, because when I do that, I know that I'm able to get more transformation out of the people that I'm speaking with, that I'm working with. And a lot of that's done through storytelling. A lot of that's done through past experience. A lot of that's done through, hey, I know that you're experiencing this. Let me tell you about a client that I worked with 6 months ago, and I'll tell you the problem that they had, which is very similar to what you're dealing with, and then what we ended up creating to solve that problem. And now you're speaking in terms of them. You're giving them an example of somebody else, and there's no way that they can't get that result. And more importantly, they're starting to believe because you've actually done it before. But when you try and have some computer app do the work for you, you're going to negate your ability to come up with those ideas. And so there's an idea that I talk about a lot. It's called opportunity cost, right? And so opportunity cost or cost of inaction. Maybe I need to coin a term for cost of ideas you didn't have. But really that's what I'm talking about is what is the cost of an idea that you could have had but didn't? And I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, but what I do know is that it is in those moments of deep introspection and deep thinking time. And that's the reason that we have ideas when we're walking or hiking or in the shower or whatever it is. That's the reason we have ideas, because there's nothing else in our mind, and we put our mind to infinite intelligence, God, the universe, whatever you want to call it. And that's when those ideas are downloaded and they seem to come out of nowhere. But if you allow a computer app or program to be the idea generator for you, I don't know, there will likely be ideas that you don't have that you could have that will transform people's lives and transform your business and transform your relationships and transform everything.
Yeah, yeah. So problem number one, right? And I just want to re-articulate this to you because I see as well, personally. So problem number one would be that really it eliminates your ability to think and flex that muscle that tends to be the quote unquote secret ingredients or your USP, your unique positioning and everything, like how you surprise and delight customers, like what marketing idea you have, what next viral thing. And I feel like, that's a really, really clear crystal problem of like eliminating your ability and your idea to think. Well, you also acknowledge that like it's an incredible tool, which I'm going to get to in a minute. Besides it eliminating your ability to think, right? What's another big challenge that you see, or a big problem or downside that you've experienced with people using AI, like in a tangible sense, and like what it costs them? So I love that breakdown. So like what I'm hearing is like problem number one with AI that you nailed, and I love this point, is it kind of eliminates your ability to think, but also your own creative ideas. And when we think about entrepreneurship, like you said, most of the people that are successful have this idea in the shower, this thinking thing, and then it leads to this thing that works, whether it's marketing or business or things like that. And I'm going to talk about the benefits of how to use the tool in a minute, but what is another challenge that you've seen besides just people relying on it too heavily for their thinking that you've seen people experience when it comes to AI?
Yeah, I mean, another thing I'm noticing happening a lot, and I don't know how many people are using this, but and I heard this on a podcast not too long ago. But even when it comes to recruiting or anything like that, one of the challenges that I'm seeing is that people are becoming very aware if something is written by AI or if it's not, and it just makes you like it just makes them feel like you're being lazy in a lot of different ways, because you can tell almost immediately, like there are not very many like well-known thought leaders that have AI write their social media posts. There are not very many well-known thought leaders that have AI write their emails, because there's no feeling in it. It can't tell stories. It can't tell personal stories or personal anecdotes or anything like that. Like it just can't do it because it doesn't know what's in your brain. And like I'll tell a story. Right now, I'm recruiting a new social media manager on my team, and I put some very specific instructions in the job post. And when I receive these emails, I can tell pretty clearly if somebody just took my job post, punched it into ChatGPT, and said, "I want you to say what you think that he wants to hear," and then I receive that and I delete the email almost immediately. And actually, I know that there's a ton of recruiting softwares that are out there that are actually scanning for AI now, because they'll just delete job posts that were created with AI. It's creating and removing personal connection. And that kind of makes me angry. One of the things, your entire training program is called Relationships Beat Algorithms Alliance. And I don't know very many people who wake up in the morning wanting to create a relationship with a robot. I know some of them might be out there. And if you're excited about Elon Musk or Tesla's new robot that's coming out because you'll have a best friend, then great, that's probably you. but most of us are created for relationships. We're created for community. We're created to have connection. And if you're using AI, you're robbing the marketplace of having a relationship with you. So you might see these apps that come up. Hey, we can create an AI avatar of your face and your voice and all these things. We can create a duplication of you. Well, the hard part about a duplication of you is that you won't be on the receiving end of the other side of that one. And so you won't get the inputs of all of that. So again, I think it still all goes back to your ability to understand and to pivot and to see what's happening in the market with a brain that actually thinks and comes up with new ideas. But it's all about the customer journey, as we talk about a lot, right? Like if you think that you can have an AI bot come in and call your customers for you or text your customers for you when you're small and you literally only have 5 to 10 conversations that you should be having a week, I would question the priorities, and I would say you're probably chasing the lady in the red dress unless you're getting 1,000 leads a month for 1,000 different things and trying to use it for a customer support engine. It always reminds me of 2 of your stories. And I know a lot about you, so I can bring these things up, which is awesome. One of them is the keynote you did at Capitalism. I think it was with Ryan Moran.
Yeah.
And I remember watching that. I was really entertained and I was really blown away because I think you called it user-generated keynote.
Yep.
So you got on the stage and you wanted to create a user-generated keynote. So you went in with no preparation. I think you said you did have something prepared, but you decided to throw it out and then just do a user-generated keynote, and people ask you questions and you could actually answer those questions authentically in an incredible way. And from what I understand, most of your clients for the next 5 years came from that.
1,000%. Yep.
And that's incredible. The second one is back when you ran Civilized Caveman, if I remember this story correctly, and you put out some social media posts and got thousands of hits and thousands of comments. You tell a story on how you stayed up all night to reply to every single comment.
Yep.
And in the future, the crazy part is I believe that what's going to happen with AI and what's going to happen with a lot of these companies is that the companies that are not using it are the ones that are going to be like, holy crap, I'm actually talking to a real person. Like, how did this happen? Like, imagine this. You have 2 different companies. One of them you call, you get the little press 1 for this, press 2 for that, press 3 for this, press 4 for that. We can help you. Here's the 5 different support articles that already solved this problem. You're annoyed, you're frustrated and irritated, and you don't want to call back again. Versus, I think it was, and this is not a plug for any bank or anything like that, but I think it was Capital One that was recently running ads or commercials saying, hey, when you call us, when you call our customer support, you're going to get a US-based agent and they're going to answer the phone without you going through anything.
Yep.
And that was their entire value proposition. So it's actually like the people that are marketing now that they don't use AI and you actually get real customer service is like mind blowing. And that's just going to continue even more because, again, it always goes back to the future of marketing or the future of business is to do things differently than everybody else is doing.
Yep. Yeah.
And so I guess the moral of this, and to bring it back home to answer your question directly, the problem is we can't outsource our customer relationships to a robot.
And I want to sprinkle on customer relationships start the first time somebody enters into your ecosystem with their first touch point, whether it's an awareness of you, somebody mentioning you, seeing a piece of your content, and carries all the way through until they're like, I want a restraining order. I'm never doing business with this person again, which hopefully never happens. And I actually really appreciate that view. I'm going to ask you in a second, just so I can give you a moment to think about when I tie this together. But like, knowing that it's such an incredible tool, right? Like, what are some of the creative ways that you use it or you found it to be massively valuable to what you said earlier of like not falling behind and using it for efficiency? Because like, to your point, and I actually thank you for reminding me of those stories. And I did give this keynote at Capitalism, and I basically was sitting in the audience, and I was there for a day and a half before my talk, and I was a fill-in for Aubrey because Aubrey got in a massive car accident, and Ryan's like, I'm like, I got you, bro. And I knew about it in advance, and I had a dear friend of mine who was Simon Sinek's number 2 and Seth Godin's number 2 for I'll write this keynote. He's like, you have to give it, you have to give it, you have to give it. But I sat in the audience and I watched talk after talk after talk of like these things that were written in advance, and people were just like not in it, like not feeling it. It just felt like this transactional mess. And I was like, I can't give this talk. And I remember walking up on stage. I'm like, I'm going to do something I've never done before, ever. And I need your help because I'm going to do a user generated keynote. And I took out a piece of paper and I was like, everybody raise your hand for whatever question you have around marketing, customer journey, scaling your business. And I literally wrote them all on the paper in front of me. And I was like, all right, cool. And I took questions for like 5 minutes. I didn't answer any of them. And I literally wrote them down. I'm like, all right, here we go. And I just kept glancing at the sheet. And I was like, all right, so here's how I would do that. And I tied it all together. And I remember saying, like, I'm here to help you with any of this. So come ask me a question. And to your point, and I don't talk about numbers often, but like it feels credible to say that like every other person speaking at that event had a back table. And they were like, come buy my offer, come buy my offer, come buy my offer. And I was like, no, just come ask me a question. And I answered questions for a copious amount of time. And over the next 5 months, 6 months, that turned into multiple 7 figures of revenue in that same vein. And the story that I told there was the civilized caveman story, because I remembered, I'm like, how many of you want 300,000 fans on Facebook? And they're like, yeah, because Facebook was big at that time before paid media was really popping. And I was like, how many of you would love 8,000 comments on one post? And they're like, yeah. How many of you would love to generate $500,000 from one post? And everyone's like, yeah. I'm like, cool. How many of you would respond to every comment on every one of your social media posts? And like nobody put their hand up. And I was like, all right, I'm going to ask you again. How many people would like 800 or 8,000 comments and $500,000? Like, yeah. I'm like, how many people would respond to every comment on every post? And like a few brave people. I was like, because that wasn't the result of that one post. It was the trailing effect of doing it consistently for 4 years. And then when and by the way, in my whole career, only one video ever went viral. It was that one. And I didn't even have an offer. I just responded to every single person and acknowledged their question. And then a few people like, can you help me with this? Can you help me with this? Can you help me with this? And it was like the birth of the first ever mastermind I did, which was helping food people monetize their business through coaching, which leads me to today. And I love your point of like, in all the scenarios that we have, every time any of us are put into like a system without a human or a transaction without a human, or it's like, I got to click 1, 2, or 3, or like, can I just get to a real human? It speaks to the power of like understanding that, in my view with AI, and this is where I'm going to transition to you, I think AI's biggest benefit is buying back time that I wasn't in relationships with people to allow me to be in relationships with people more. And whether it's coming up with a creative idea because I'm stuck with writer's block and I'm like, oh, that's a good angle. Let me go humanize that and turn that into a piece of content. Or, holy moly, these are a lot of emails to read. Let me run them through this and see if I can find commonalities. And so in that vein, knowing how much you use AI and what you do, like what have you found to be like the biggest benefits or like the biggest advantages that you've found by using it and using it creatively while protecting that human connection, right? But then adding the human flair to it to be able to be effective.
Yeah, I think I think you actually just hit the nail on the head. And Jordan Peterson talks about this a lot too. He had a few podcasts where he was going really deep in AI, and you could tell that he just went down some insane rabbit holes. But the way that I think about it, or here's a good framework, is you are a researcher and you need to do a lot of research whenever you're creating anything, whether it's stories that you need to find or articles you want to reference or anything like that. You need to think of the AI as a research assistant. It's not somebody who's ever going to write your papers for you. It's not somebody who's ever going to write your articles for you. It's not somebody who's ever going to do any of those things. But it is somebody who can help you come up with additional ideas to support the ideas that you already have. And one of the things that I actually love about it, and here's maybe a little hack, is ask it for the opposite of your ideas. And so one thing that I do a lot is I kind of work on the law of inverses or anything like that. And just to give you a quick overview of how that works, if I ask somebody, what are the 3 to 5 things you think you could do to grow your company right now? they're going to come up with a few ideas. But if I ask them, what are the 3 to 5 or maybe 10 ideas you could do to destroy your company right now? You will come up with a significantly higher number of ideas. I did this in my relationship a couple weeks ago, not to be like overly transparent, but what I wanted to do was like figure out some things that I could do to improve my relationship. And I was writing out some things that I could do, but instead of writing out the things that I could do, I chose to write out the things that I shouldn't do. And I was like, what would I do to absolutely ruin my relationship right now? And I ended up coming up with like 20 to 25 ideas. And then what did I do? I just took the opposite of those. I was like, this is what I have to do. And it was way easier for me to come up with those ideas. But when I say that AI can remove your ability to think, it doesn't mean that you can't use it to come up with ideas. But a lot of people have told me, and I'm sure they've told you this, George, that they're like, I don't know how you know what questions to ask it. Like, how do you know what to type in order to get good responses? And that's one of the biggest things. It's called prompting or being a prompt engineer. There's actually a job role for this now because you can be either really good at it or you can completely suck at it. But being able to guide and lead the robot, if you will, to give you the responses that you want and tell it to stop responding like a robot with too many adjectives is a skill in and of itself. But you just have to get the reps in, even playing around with it to be able to do that. But the crazy thing is, it is a very, very useful tool. It saves so much time. Like if you're creating a course or if you're creating an email series or if you're creating anything, one of the things I ask it for a lot is frameworks. Mm-hmm. And so I have an idea that I train people on called the meta frameworks and different things like that. But at the end of the day, you can think of a framework as like a word picture or a series of words. Like you have the 7 laws of marketing. That's a framework. You have quite a few other ones, and I probably can't name them here. But you have quite a few frameworks, and coming up with frameworks is a really cool thing because frameworks allow our human brains to take a complex idea and simplify it in a way that we can remember. And so ChatGPT is incredible at coming up with frameworks. So let me give you a tangible example. Let's say I'm trying to come up with an email series, and it's a follow-up email series after somebody opts in my landing page for a lead magnet. I can punch in there all the content in the lead magnet and I can say, hey, I want you to come up with a framework for a 7-part email series. And it can tell me the topics of those emails. Now, if I try and take it the next step and say, write the emails for me, that's where I'm going to go wrong because I should write the emails myself, or at very least take them and humanize them and add human emotion and add stories and add real elements of real experiences that I've had in the past with those. But it can get me started and it can get me 70 to 80% of the way there. And so when you talk about it saving an incredible amount of time so I can spend more time with my customers, that entire process, like I can now create a 15-part email series in a day where it used to take a week because I'm getting the majority of the framework or the outline of what I should have, all the filler, all the interesting pieces, the super signatures. I'm having it come up with 20 different variations of the same thing in different ways. So it sounds cool. If you don't know what a super signature is, join George's program. He'll teach you. But you have it come up with different variations of the same copy or have it come up with different variations or different angles. It's even useful in writing ads in the fact that if you give it really good information on the front of like, here's what I was thinking. I already wrote these 5. Can you give me some of these words back in the way that my customer avatar would say them? But you have to take it one step further. Because when you say in the way that my customer avatar would, you're assuming already that it knows who your customer avatar is. So here is, and I'll give you a bonus question as well. So when you're prompting, is there anything else you need to know?
Yep.
Or don't start yet. Those things, don't let it just spit out or regurgitate an answer. Ask it, what else would be helpful for you to be able to do a good job? And it'll ask you, it'll literally say, like, I had it come up with a bunch of scripts and stuff like that for a podcast. And the first thing that I do is saying, hey, I'm trying to do this thing. And this thing is for, the bio and show notes and all the captions and the YouTube channel and all these things for a podcast. But before you start, like, I want you to be a copywriter for me. So you name the position. What do you need to know from me? And then it's just going to ask you all the questions. And what's beautiful about this is, like, I can think back at courses that I took 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago. And one of the things I think a lot about is what were the worksheets that they gave us, right? Like we ran some mastermind events together. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember we had a lot of worksheets that we would hand out, and the worksheets would ask different questions. That's all the AI is doing for you. It's basically your teacher, and it's giving you the worksheets to fill in the answers so it can give you the result that it wants. And so you
Mm-hmm.
still need to do the work. You still need to fill in the worksheets. But the crazy part is, again, what else do you need to know? What else
Mm-hmm.
do you need to know in order to be a successful copywriter? What else do you need to know in order to successfully write these emails for me? Um, Here's a crazy one. I don't know if you've done this, but this is the Mind of George show, right?
That is.
So I created a Mind of Josh GPT for my team to use. And so what I did is I took every blog article I have ever written, and I
Mm.
took every social media post I've ever written, and I took a lot of Google Docs that I wrote personally, and I entered them all in as data. And then what I told it to do is like, hey, I want you to pretend that you're me and be able to respond and create social media posts as if you're me. But at least I'm feeding it a lot of content that is me. So you could have a Mind of George GPT, but you have to feed it with all of the content that you've already created. And when you do that, it'll be a shortcut for your team. It's not
Mm-hmm.
a solve for your team, meaning that, let's say, for example, I want my team to create 30 social media posts for the next 30 days, and I have them use this thing and they use a content calendar, whatever it is. I still need to edit them. I
Mm-hmm.
still need to go in and make sure that they're good enough, make sure that I add the human touch and stories and other things. And in that process, a lot of cool stuff's going to show up. And so let it help you, let it be your research assistant, but don't let it do the job start to finish for you, because
Mm-hmm.
people will know, people will see it. And I'm sure at some point the algorithms are going to start picking up AI content versus non-AI content and real stuff versus not real stuff. But I mean, if anybody's out there who has been in marketing for any period of time, you know, like you
Yep.
see a post and you know if ChatGPT created it, or you know if that person took the extra 5 minutes or 10 minutes to make it good. You know,
Yeah. And I want to add
sorry, go ahead.
go ahead. I was gonna say I want to add a few things because like I'm like a baby with it and I use it. But to your point, I use it to get unstuck or for like a research assistant. But to your point about frameworks, one of the things that I also do is I realize like when I get an idea, right? Like I'll write a caption or record a video or write something out that really is like 7 things in one and it overwhelms people. So like I'll run it through and be like, hey, this is where I want to share this so that it's effective for people to be able to watch it and take action on it. How would you break this down into a framework that's actionable or one that hits on what it is, why it matters, and how it's done? Or like, a really easy framework for everybody to know with marketing is like PAS, right? It's been talked about for years. But I'll even go grab like old captions and be like, hey, do me a favor, can you please break this caption down into PAS and let me know if I'm missing any points or any pieces here? And like even the other day, I was like really stuck because I wanted to make a carousel and I was like, this feels like it would be better shown visually. And I was like, I just don't know what to put on the slides. And so I grabbed the caption that I wrote and I was like, do me a favor. Can you map this out in like a 10 slide carousel for me for Instagram that has like a catchy hook and title on the front, gives context on slide 2, and then has a call to action on the last slide? And within like 10 seconds, it spit me out this like beautiful. And I was like, wow, that is a way better way to structure that. Like that makes logical sense to my brain. And that means somebody else could be able to do it. So I also use it a lot to simplify the complexity that my brain comes up with sometimes. And I'll even take some of my frameworks and feed it into it and be like, hey, here's my framework on like the 5 steps of customer journey. And I'm working with this product. And like, what would you outline to hit each one of these 5 steps? And like, what am I missing? And it just like sparks creativity or like reminds my brain of like something I knew, but I forgot, or, oh yeah, that's a really important point to hit. And so I almost use it like a coworker where I'm like, this thing knows as much as I do if I prompt it right. And like, tell me this or help me with this. Or, even when it comes up with like connecting with people, like opening lines of captions, right? Like to get somebody's attention of like, oh, that's a good one. And I'm like, well, let me check and see if there might be a better way to say it. And I did it today. And I was like, I had this one and I was like, oh, this is a really good hook that's connected with people. And then I spit it in and I'm like, hey, I'm writing this hook to help entrepreneurs that are feeling this way. And I just want them to resonate with it without feeling bad and wrong, but it really to like land and pique their interest. Can you give me 10 other ideas on how to rewrite this? And the first three were 100 times better with words and clearer without complexity in them. And I'm like, oh, got it. Yeah, like I'll use that one. And so I even go as far too, like if I have a really complex idea that I want to share on the podcast, and I know me, and you're very similar to me, if you ask me a question, we'll give you the whole answer, but we're going to take you down 72 different rabbit holes and end up at the end. And you and I share this in common. And I'll be like, hey, I'm going to teach this topic and here's how I'm going to teach it. And this is the story I want to use, but can you spit it out for me in a framework to make sure that I stay on task so that when I'm teaching it or talking about it, that it lands with the audience, and give me some questions to ask and things to write down so that they can have it resonate on their side, and it'll spit it out to me. I'm like, okay, that's so much better, instead of me going down all these different rabbit holes because I want my content to be effective. And so I think I look at it like a coworker, and like I'm like a baby with it, right? Like I haven't done the mind of George GPT because I wouldn't even know how to begin putting my podcasts in there and doing all of that stuff. But I also think, to your point earlier, it's about putting the reps in. And what I found is, like, if I'm stuck somewhere, or like I have a creative block, or I feel like I'm doing a mundane task, or I'm struggling to write a caption or come up with a video idea, I'll just go plug in and start asking it questions. And I'm even starting to use the audio feature of like, hey, here's where I'm stuck. And this is what I'm really struggling with. Like, I just had this happen with a client and I want to be able to share this story with people effectively, but I don't know how. Like, how would I begin to share this in an Instagram story that would help my audience learn it and implement it so that they can fix this in their business? And it'll be like, boom, boom, boom. I'm like, there we go. So I almost use it like my get out of jail free card, or like my 911 to like get me back into creation or into action. So do you have another thought to add?
No, I mean, one of the things that I love that you're saying is at the very beginning of this show, one of the things we talked about is that I have the ability to remind you of stuff that you taught me forever ago.
Yeah.
And it's totally true. But one of the craziest parts is like when we're coaching and consulting and working with other people, sometimes it's hard to apply our own frameworks to ourselves. But when we tell an app to apply our framework, it's kind of like we have a third party view. We can actually create our own consultant. We can create our own coach. And like, so you really have to figure out a way to work that works best for the way that your brain works, right? And I know for me, and this is actually something I used to do. I used to have blocks on my calendar where I would literally have a VA come in and they would just sit there while I build stuff, because I build stuff way better with another person, just kind of bouncing ideas back and forth with that person. And yeah, I would like pay that person to just sit there and listen to me talk. Well, now I have like an AI bot that can do it, but can actually give me great feedback on the same stuff as well at the same time. So that's why, like, it is an incredible tool. And if you're not using it, it's going to hold you back. But if you use it too much, there's like a sweet spot, like a dichotomy of like,
Mm-hmm.
you can't not use it because you'll get left behind. And you can't use it too much because then you'll rely too much on it and you won't be able to think for yourself. And so it's kind of like that middle, like you are the brand. You are the voice of what you do, how you help your customers solve their problems and all of that. But it's there to assist you in every way. And it's there to help you get unstuck. And it's there to be a sounding board. And it's there to give you additional ideas or expand upon ideas. Like, to go back to that, like that framework that I was telling you about for a client of mine, like the framework is problem, possibility, path, pitch. So the way that I do it is like We list out 20 problems, then we list out the opposite of those problems, just like the law of inverses. And then we talk about the path of, different cool things that we could create to get them from the problem to possibility, which will create product ideas. And then the pitch is like where you stack it all together, and that's your pitch. So if you say, I could create this PDF, and I can create this webinar, I can create this training, I can create this course, I can create this thing, and all of these cool things will help make it way more likely that they achieve the after state or the possibility. And so it's kind of like an offer creation and an avatar thing. But let's say, for example, I list out 10 to 15 problems, and then I tell it like, look, these are some of the main problems I could think of. But what I want you to do is I want you to cascade this pain through body, being, balance, and business, and let me know, like, how does this affect people's marriages? How does it affect their physical fitness, right? Like, how does their money game affect their ability to go to the gym? How does it affect their sleep? How does it affect their stress levels, their cortisol, all of these different things? Because you will come up with a ridiculous amount more ideas, and some of them will really land and you won't even know. So like, I'm not trying to say that you can't use AI to come up with ideas. I'm saying use it to expand upon the good ideas you already have and make them better. And that's what I think I just heard you say as well.
Yeah. Because even like another one that I just remembered, like just as another creative use, like a lot of the times when I get into the flow of writing where I'm like, oh my God, like I'm writing and I write this caption. I'm like, oh, this caption is fire for Instagram. I'll go to post it and it's like too long. And I'm like, oh, I don't know what to trim. And I'll go into ChatGPT and I'm like, hey, I wrote this incredible caption for Instagram and I want to keep all of it the same and embody the same feelings. But can you go through and edit this and get it under the character count for Instagram? And in like instantaneous, and like, oh, yeah, I guess I didn't need that part and that part. That tends to be more resonant and there because I can't post it on Instagram. Like it's too long. And so I kind of just use it as a way to constantly refine. Like I use it to like inspiration or iteration with me putting my touch on kind of everything, and including like even some of the concepts. Like, I'll do a video where I'm like, this is what my heart feels like sharing. And I'll do this video and I'll be like, oh, that video. And it'll be like 6 minutes long. And I'll grab it or the transcript of it and I'll throw it in ChatGPT. I'll be like, hey, I was recording this video for this reason. And this is what my intention was. But can you go through this video and pull it out to be in a script or a framework that would be better landed or understood on the other side, in a more condensed version. And I had one example a couple of weeks ago because somebody asked me on Facebook. I was like, hey, are there any questions I can answer for you? And one of my friends was like, how do I start to love myself? And I'm like, oh, okay, here's a question. And I love this question. Like, I'm in, I'll take the bait, right? Like this is something I work on and I'm in. And so I just started like kind of writing down and thinking through my answers. And I opened the audio version and I'm like, okay, I got asked this question and here's what my answer would be. And I went through like my whole answer. I was like, I would do this and I would focus on here and I would focus on here. And I was like, can you please break this down in a known framework that would help somebody understand that like I understand their problem. And then this is why we create it and what the simple solutions would be based on what I said. And it like instantaneously was like, boom, boom, boom. And I was like, that's a way better way to answer that question. But it took my words, it took my answers, and it just gave me a better structure to have it land where I still get to add my humanity and I got to be myself. But I was like, if I follow it in like a 3-part movie of like part 1, part 2, part 3, it's going to resonate better. And it did. I sent it to this person and they were like, that is so incredibly helpful. And I know exactly what to take action on. And I was like, oh, I feel better. I didn't just leave you like ruminating on like, here's what I think and what I would do. It helps me be clear and concise in even how I communicate sometimes.
Yeah, that's interesting. What I'm thinking about right now is like we live in a world where people are used to 30-second bits of information. They're scrolling through reels on Instagram. They're scrolling through reels on TikTok or whatever their social media platform is. They're scrolling through all this stuff. And the things that really make a difference, like, you go live on Facebook or you do a live video, and I know you've done tons of these, and you're rambling on for 7 minutes, 8 minutes, however long. And there's nothing wrong with that because that actually helps people get to know you. So there's a use for that. There's a purpose for that. But when people are looking for actionable things to get results right now, I love that you said they were able to read it and it was my ideas, and they were able to immediately take action on the thing that I told them to take action on, because what I use the tool for is not to come up with a new idea, but to take the idea that I already gave it and make it clear, more concise, and actionable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Clarity, consistency, and action. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a framework for you. I need you to spit
Mm-hmm.
this out with clarity, with something that somebody can take action on, and make it concise, make it very small so that they don't have to spend a ton of time thinking about it and can go and get the action or get the result that I promised them right now. Um, Kind of reminds me of like the difference between counseling and the people that do NLP therapy. I worked with an NLP coach, which, if you guys don't know what that is, it's neuro linguistic programming. And his biggest business problem was that he couldn't get repeat customers because he solved their problems too fast. And then they didn't need him anymore. And the difference is that he actually gave people actionable solutions, changed their stories, and rewired their brains in one session, versus the opposite, which is, tell me about all your problems in your childhood and all these different things with no actionable things. And then you end up in a worse place than you were before after 20 or 52 weeks of sessions, and you didn't create anything actionable and just made it worse. And so the reason that I'm studying hypnotic language and neurolinguistic programming and a lot of the powers of the brain is that in the copy and in the ways that we are called, if you are a coach, to transform the people that you work with, we need to make sure that they get the results. And similar to a conversation that we were having prior to hitting record, it's kind of like when you do what we do, we take a lot of weight on the results that our
Mm-hmm.
clients get, because we feel responsible, because we feel connected. We can feel connected to our team. We feel connected to the people that work for us. We feel connected to the people that we work for. And we really, really, really want them to win. So much so that we will, literally give our left foot for them to win. Maybe not our left foot, but we will do almost anything we can for them to win. And so we want that so badly, but we also have a million ideas as far as how to make that possible. And so if you can create something that's clear in more concise language, and I might actually try this out after this call, to start prompting it to utilize hypnotic language in a way to get people into a state that's more receptive. Because the
Mm-hmm.
more receptive of a state, i.e., if I can give somebody a message while they're in a shower, not thinking about anything else, then it's going to be way more, or picked up way better than if they're in the middle of looking at 3 different screens on their computer, messaging this person, doing that, and you're also trying to talk to them. It's kind of like, I don't know, I see a number of people that'll come on group training programs. I do it myself too, so I'm also a victim of this. But you go on a group training program and you're like, sure, I'll hop on this Zoom call really quick. But during the Zoom call, you're doing 19 other things, and you're messaging your team and doing all of that, and nothing lands, and you get no results of it. And you would have been better off not joining it at all, because you weren't in a receptive state. You weren't in a place like, it's funny because like I watch Tony Robbins and a lot of these people that like are the gurus, if you will, and when you see things through the lens of like what they're actually doing and state changes and getting people to breathe and getting people to do that so that they can get results, it's kind of crazy to watch it from a meta perspective. And I think that we might actually be able to use AI to do that. So now my
Mm.
brain's thinking and coming up with ideas right now.
Yeah, and to your earlier point about flexing the thinking muscle, it also triggered another thought for me, and how I use this too, because so many people listening to this, like, we're entrepreneurs, right? We're coaches, we're consultants, we're course creators, we have products, we have all these things. And, one of the core principles that I stand by is that, the effectiveness of our product or service is really down to somebody's ability to implement it and understand it, right? And I know, even in my own self-awareness, I'm really good about teaching the theory, the understanding, the what, the why, but also there's complexity there. And one of my weak points has always been, not that I can't tell somebody how to take action on it, but like putting it into like a simple step or a model. And so like I've even gone so far of like, hey, I have this training where I'm helping with boom, 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 and give it to it. If you were assigning this to somebody, what are the 3 action steps that you would pull out of it that they could take immediate action on, and like coming up with worksheet ideas or implementables? Like, it's it's like a support system for everything that you do that helps it land better. And even like right now, I'm working with a company I love called Rebalance, and I love the supplement, and like we're redesigning the customer journey, and I'm thinking through frameworks that would anchor it in the branding of the company for these daily behaviors and actions. And I can be like, and I'm getting ready to do this tomorrow on a call, but like, hey, here's the daily habits and behaviors that I want them to follow. Can you create an acronym with the brand name of things for them to focus on and a checklist of items that would help them measure their success in the pursuit of their goals, right? And like, it's almost like using it as like a depth adder for you, or like cascading down into all the levels of like, for somebody to think it amazing and understand it, feel it great, but then what do they take action on? And a lot of us have superpowers, just like your superpower for you that I know is like you think and process. Like you're like, okay, step one, step two. I don't think like that naturally. So I'll use ChatGPT or Claude or any of them to help me see the process that I'm actually speaking through that I can't see, to then give me the ingredients to like break it down. Just like if I was really, really good on process, like, hey, I have this process I follow. I have this thing that I always do. Like, why am I doing this? Or what's a good way to teach this for people to understand the importance of it? And you can use it to like stop gap and fill in the gap of those like blind spots where normally it'd be like, hey, we have the whole team on a call, right? And one of the team members is really good on process. One of them's really good on vision. One of them's really good at like vulnerabilities or inversion theory of like poking holes in it. And you can almost use it as like a gap filler for where there's a lack of team or awareness to your own strong suits or even to your weaknesses, to help fill them with awarenesses and flex that muscle. Because that's another one that I recognized, where I've even gone so far as like in our alliance, right, which you're in, and I'm like, we'll record this video, and I'm like, oh yeah, focus on this, and I'm like, can you take this and give me question prompts based on this that will help somebody come to the same level of clarity that I'm teaching in this video? And I'm like, yeah, and I look at them and I'm like, well, those are way better ones than I had in my head, right? And I'm like, oh, that supports the content, that supports the idea. Like my intention is for somebody to understand it and then be able to implement it and go so far there. And so I love the sparks of creativity and the ideas. Did I spark another one in you? Do you have another one?
No, I mean the I just wanted to say the one thing that's showing up for me that I hear you saying right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, is I'm hearing you say that we need to be really clear on what our strengths are, and then we can utilize AI to pick up and to fill in the gaps when we don't have some other tool or some other person, or we just don't want to waste some other person's time, because it can really, really help you with those
Yeah.
things. But most of us are more inclined towards the integrator or towards the visionary side. If you've ever read Rocket Fuel, or any of those things, I'm very much on the visionary side. So I'm great at coming up with ideas and seeing the vision of where a company could go, and even looking at somebody that I'm working with and seeing what the most ideal version of them could be if they did all of the things that I teach people how to do. And like, I love that version, and I'm like, I really want that version to come true. And I'm great at the process side of things too. But when it comes to actually implementing, it's a challenge. And so we have to bring in people. It's like I'm creating a training program, and it's a 4-step framework. It's automate, outsource, optimize, and AI. And so at the end of the day, all 4 of those things are there to support you in filling in that gap. You can either automate things, you can optimize processes, you can outsource them to somebody else or somebody on your team, or you can use AI. And all of them are useful in different functions or in different areas, depending on what you want to do. So if you're an entrepreneur listening to this and you're very much on the visionary side, there's a good chance you can use AI to come up with structure and process for yourself. If you're more on the integrator side, there's a really good chance you can use it to take it and maybe punch in an idea and say, like, where could you see this going? Give me 7 different business models that I could use this for. So have it be your visionary, because it can do that too. So, hey,
Mm-hmm.
I want you to act like a visionary for me. I have this really cool idea. I have no idea where it could go or what it could turn into, but I'm not a great visionary. I'm really good at building things. And if you tell me what to do, then I'll know how to do it. But I don't have that visionary side. Can you be my visionary for me? And so then it could
Yep.
tell you all the possibility. And that's an incredible way to use it too. But I wouldn't want it to be my visionary, because I like being my visionary. It's where I thrive. I love that. So again, what I hear you saying is you can take it and have it work on your weaknesses while you're remain in your strengths and the things that give you lifeblood every single day.
1,000%, 1,000%. And really, because we got to start landing this plane. I think the sky is the limit. And what I've also learned, and this is going to sound really weird, but I also use it like a coach and a best friend, where I will even tell it where I'm stuck or where I'm struggling and help me identify like what to focus on first or what to take action on first. And, you're kind of, the results that you get are limited by like kind of how you talk to it. But I have found like playing really, really kindergartner level with it has been really, really powerful for me of like, I'm really stuck on this idea. Like, can you help me figure out what action step to take and ask me the questions that I would need to answer? And then it's like, boom, 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 boom. And, even to your point earlier, I struggle because I'm not in it. I only use it like once a week. Right. And when I do it, I'm like, I'm really struggling with this, but I don't know what question to ask you to help me get into action. Can you teach me or give me questions to ask you or prompt you that will help me achieve X? And then it's like, yep, here we go. Here we go. And then I am going to share one anecdote that Josh knows about. Everybody's seen it kind of trending where it's like, hey, based on our previous interactions, can you tell me something that I need to know about myself that I might not know based on what you see? And I did that prompt a week and a half ago, and I broke down in tears reading its response because it has memory of everything I've ever asked it, from working with clients to how I help them to answering questions. And it really like nailed that. I post this on Facebook that I'm like this heart-centered entrepreneur, and it can feel this boom, boom, boom. And then I'm going to do an entire podcast on this for everybody listening to this. It'll probably come out after. Last night I sat down and I said, based on our previous interactions, I want you to give me the hard truth that you think I might not be ready to hear, that would also help me become a better version of myself and have a bigger impact with what I want to do. And it spit out an answer to me that brought me to my knees. And then I said, anything else? And then I said, anything else? And it spit out 3 of the coldest, hardest truths that I took screenshots of and sent to my coaches and my best friends. And all of them were like, wow, speechless. It nailed it. And then this morning I look in and I said, and based on those answers, can you help me put into practice an action plan or a process to focus through or follow to be able to implement these things? And verbatim, it spit out what I would have had my coach give me of like, practice this, focus on this, release this, and like, almost like, and I hate to say this, like my therapist, and saved me an hour on a couch, but helped me like really look at it. And truthfully, because it's AI, it wasn't like my best friend being like, hey, I feel like you're struggling with this, and then me taking it personal. I'm like, this is just based on data interactions. And it was spot on, like genuinely spot on. And so I think there's so many creative ways that I think we can all use it and play with it. And to your point earlier, I have felt behind the curve because I know people managing their whole podcast with it and making video scripts with it and all these things, but I feel like that's their strength. And I think leveraging it to play into your strengths more, but then getting creative on how you use it to stop gap or fill gaps in what could be weak areas or areas that you lose focus in. It also is trained and conditioned to support it however you choose to use it. But I've realized that the sky is the limit when it comes to how you use it. But I think everybody should get familiar with using it and playing with it and starting with it. So I wanted to share that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going anywhere.
No,
it's not going anywhere, and it's just going to keep getting better. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you have your early adopters, and then you have your, I forget what that framework is, but you typically have the first people that use something, and then your early adopters, and then the mass comes to something, and then you have your laggards later on. But like, try and lean in, because it's actually so much fun. Like, it is literally so much fun. Like the things that he's talking about doing, aside from the fact that it can floor you, it's so much fun. And like the, going back to what you said a second ago, it was the same power prompt that I mentioned earlier. What else do you need to know from me? What else do you need to ask me? I'm trying to do this thing. I have no idea what to do. What else do you need to know? And so the AI can actually teach you what to teach it. which is like
Mm-hmm.
one of the most incredible power prompting or power moves. I think it is called power prompting or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I think that's a good place to look at it, is like your key takeaway is go in there, play around with it, and ask it what it should ask you. Ask it what you should ask it. Like, hey, what's going on? This is my first time using ChatGPT. What should I be asking you right now? How can I have fun with this? It'll tell you.
Mm-hmm.
And you will go down some ridiculous rabbit holes. I have. You can have so much fun with it. Like, I created a GPT with the voice of Marcus Aurelius to give me advice.
Yeah.
Just for fun. I was reading some Stoic philosophy, some Ryan Holiday books, and I was like, it'd be really cool to have Marcus Aurelius as a coach after I was reading Meditations. And then I just asked it. I was like, I need you to be my coach. And anytime I run into a problem, I need you to answer me with Stoic philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that was pretty cool. It's still sitting there. I use it maybe once a month, but it's fun.
Yeah.
Helps me come up with cool stuff. But yeah, just have fun with it. Use power prompting, play around with it, but don't let it be a replacement for your customer relationships. I think that's the moral of the story.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the sky's the limit, right? Like it's almost like this unlimited testing ground of play and fun and playing to strengths and getting creative ideas and getting inspiration and trimming things out. But it's a tool that supports you in being more of you, right? It will never replace you. But I think that there's a lot of options and opportunities. And even then, the level of creativity that it's sparked in my brain and the ideas that I've got, and not that it's given me, but by asking it those questions and diving deep into some of those rabbit holes, I'm like, well, maybe I could do this, or maybe I could try this, or maybe I could play with this. And I think it really, really is. It's like the sixth member of your basketball team, like the hidden member, where it's like, let me just run it through here real quick. Like I keep the app on my phone and I'm like, oh, I have this thought, right? But even as a dad, I'll use it for my son all the time, right? Like, Dad, I want to play this game. I'm like, can you make up a game for us to do that includes X, Y, and Z that will help us play this? And like really just changing perspective of like what we do and how we do it and how we think about things, I think is really the fun part. And you're way deeper in the rabbit hole of like making custom GPTs and all these things that all my friends do. And I'm like, I can't even get it to spit out an image to me half the time to look like I want. And then I'm like, but the word part, I can do the word part because it's like having a conversation with a friend. And I play with it. And I think for everybody listening to this, like, even if it's in a point of like, there's these tasks that I like hate doing, look at them in parts. And like, is there a part where you could get inspiration or you could clean up some of that or have it break it down for you in a series of steps? Or you're like, I'm really stuck with this idea, and be like, hey, I have this one idea and I don't know how to begin writing. Can you give me 3 prompts to start a sentence, or what I should include? Like, I really, really feel like the sky's the limit. And the one last that I'll share with is like, a lot of like, I read a lot of books. I love referencing them. I've gone so far as like, I'm trained in so many things, and like spiral dynamics being one of them. And I was like, hey, I'm a little rusty. Can you give me a refresher on the levels of spiral dynamics and what each level means and what I should be focusing on? Or, hey, remember that book, The Catalyst, that I put in here? Can you refresh me on the focus points based on X, Y, and Z? And it's literally almost like my dream team Google, but it spits it out instantly. And I think for everybody, have fun with it, play with it, try it, use it. But to Josh's point, and of course, Josh will come back on the show and I'm sure we'll unpack something else. Use it to your advantage to just kind of spark ideas, creativity, but don't let it get in the way of being you, because you are the secret sauce. Like, you're the differentiator between every other thing that's done in AI, right? Like, you're the difference in your business than your competitor's business who does the same thing. Like, it's you, it's your identity, it's your beliefs, it's your humanity, it's your personality, it's your stories. But if you can leverage it as a way to be able to use more of them or share more of them or free up more time to be able to do more of it, I think it's a very, very powerful weapon. So Josh, closing words, closing thoughts. I see you spinning over there. You just looked up something. You're probably going to go make something.
No, I remembered that I needed to buy a book on spiral dynamics because that's something that I want to study. I also read a crap load, and that's one thing that I guess I would leave you with that note. AI is only going to be as good as the inputs that you know to give it. And we have to continue to be adding to our infinite knowledge storehouse that we have in our brains. The number of times I get on training calls or coaching calls with people and they might mention something and I remember a book from 2017 that I read and I can point them directly in that direction because I read that book or because of whatever it was. And so to ask it about spiral dynamics because you're continuing to do that. Because you're continuing to add to your knowledge and information. Like the most successful people I've seen in the world don't listen to music when they drive. And that's a big way to know the difference. If you listen, like if you're driving in a car and you're using that time to just listen to the same song you've heard 100 times over and again, like versus somebody who's successful, they're listening to podcasts, they're learning, they're always growing and adding to the infinite storehouse because you never know where in the future you're going to use it or in what AI prompt you're going to use something that you read in a book in 2019. And it's just insane because when you have your knowledge, you can even like write in something and say, hey, I remember this idea and I read it in a book and I don't even remember what book it was, but it's really cool. Can you like tell me some books that might say something? And then you'll remember and you'll figure it out. But like I always tell people, you don't go to college to learn the information. You go to college to learn where to find it. And AI is a great place to find the information, but you need to at least have the foundations of the frameworks and different pieces and multivariate. And I like to consider myself, and I think that you are also a polymath. You're good at lots of different things in many different domains across the board because you're just interested and curious. And so just remain curious, and AI will really support you in that.
Yeah. And so I have an ask of everybody listening to this, and I'll have Josh share where to find him. It's also be linked in the show notes in a minute. But I genuinely want to crowdsource this for my own personal benefit and fun. Can anybody listen to this who uses AI, plays with AI, shoot either of us or both of us a DM on Instagram with like your favorite way to use it? Like, how do you use it? What creative things have you found? What prompts do you use? Like, I want to know all the like far reaching rabbit holes that you've fallen into, and nothing's off limits. If it's food creation, recipes, habits, strategies, work, entrepreneurship, like I kind of want to crowdsource some recipes for me to play with when I'm in one of those flights and all I'm doing is playing with ChatGPT the whole time. But I would love to hear from everybody, like how you use it, what it solved for you or anything. So like send them my way. But Josh, will you give everybody the best places to connect with you, please?
Yeah, Instagram is probably the best. Instagram or Facebook. It's just literally just search for Joshua Jurkovich and you'll find me.
He's the only one. You'll find him.
I am the only
Joshua
one.
Jurkovich.
So I am the only Josh Jurkovich that I know of. There is a Josh Aronovich, which is very similar, and we were on a podcast together, but just very different. But he's also an incredible human being, so you should follow him.
He is. Well, yeah, brother. Well, thank you for coming on the show again. This was actually fun, and for everybody listening, right? Like, I feel like the number one thing I would say is like, even just use what we shared. If none of it is like something you want to do as inspiration to play and figure out where you can create relief in your life or leverage this tool that exists that could potentially help in some way, shape, or form, and like kind of have fun with it. Like just be a student of it and play with it. And that doesn't mean you have to master it, know how to make custom GPTs or spit out images or video scripts, but it's like, what's one thing I can play with today? What's one thing I can try today? What's a different perspective I can have? What's a book summary? What's an inversion theory? What's another way to write that, or a framework I can learn, and use it to your benefit to help you, to Josh's point, increase your knowledge bank, the things that you have access to, and then leverage that to be able to do more of what you want to do. And I think that would be like my invitation for everybody is like, just play with it. Just play with it.
Oh my God, I'm so excited to get those messages. That's a great way to close.
Yeah, me too. So I look forward, and I mean this, I want to know. And I don't care if you're like, teach me how to knit. Great, send it to me because I'll watch and see if it can teach me how to knit because that's a life skill I don't have yet. And I want to know all the creative ways, any ideas, any of it. Because I've had people send me honey badgers with pink mohawks that they somehow managed to make for me, and a teddy bear in a Speedo holding a machine gun. And they're like, hey, this is you in front of a lighthouse. And I'm like, cool, how'd you do that? Like, I want to know because I just want to practice and play with it and see what we can come up with. So any ideas anybody has, any ways you use it, all the creative ways. And then if I get enough of them, I'll probably just collect them all and share them in a show, just so we all have some creative inspiration to work with and things to try and play with. And so, Josh, thanks for being here again, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So for everybody listening, this has been another episode of the Mind of George Show. You will either see us in the next episode or you will hear me in your earballs. But either way, we're out. Remember that relationships will always beat algorithms, especially the one with yourself. And based on today's show, keep that relationship with yourself and sharing that version of you at the forefront of everything you do. And do not try to replace it with AI, because it is the only thing that nobody can take away from you. And it is the number one differentiating factor that nobody else can touch. And so love you all. I appreciate you. God bless, and we'll see you soon.